And it's now 5 minutes after 7, time for us to get into the newsroom, where we look at how we, the members of the Fourth Estate, have done our job. And I'll introduce the panel that we have here this morning. To my extreme left, we have Clay Muganda, who is an editor with The Standard. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Karibu sana. We also have Eric Latif, who is a journalist. Karibu sana.
Good morning.
Last but not least, we have David Ohito, who is a digital editor with us here in The Standard. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, obviously, we'd have to start with the drama that we saw yesterday in the National Assembly. This is after they had promised that there was going to be a showdown. We do have the Court Coalition had said they were not going to take this lightly, and well, we saw what happened. But just a quick reminder and a refresher of some of the happenings yesterday in the National Assembly.
Me, what I want to tell you, today I said I have dedicated this day to tell Uhuru every negative thing I want to tell him. Because some of us fought in this country for freedoms and democracy when Uhuru was busy enjoying himself out of the country as the son of the president and nyaf nyaf. He cannot come and take the freedoms that people like Muruli died for. That I come into parliament as an elected member of parliament, naambiwa tembea. My boss in parliament is the speaker. We have 3 arms of parliament, of government: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. I do not see what the executive arm is doing around me. I have no business with the executive. Uhuru is a fake president. Let him pack, prepare Arudi Gatundi, P.O. Box Gatundu. He should stop harassing Kenyans. He has failed to even sort his own backyard Gatundu. People are poor. I have seen his own community suffering. And atuambia nini?
Now, this meeting is illegal. If you look at it constitutionally, it's illegal. Number 2, when these laws were brought from Windsor, everybody was in agreement that we should not amend a comma and a full stop. How can we now be called in a recess in a December 20th, where people have come all over, and this meeting is not allowed? I want to tell them, electronically is the law. If they don't want to do it, India has got over 600 million voters, and the country decided within 4 hours, and not a single discrepancy. Sasa itakuwaje wanataka kwenda manually? This is not allowed, because when the discussions were done in Windsor, it should have been done there.
So why are you not allowing the whole exercise maybe to go and ventilate the same issues on the floor of the House? Why block the speaker from gaining access to the chamber?
Sasa speaker anaita mkutano ambao ni illegal. If he knows the constitution, kama yeye anajua sharia ya Kenya hii, kisha yeye ajue this is an illegal meeting. Is it so important that in December you just want to sneak in an election law for the benefit maybe for Jubilee Party, and then nyinyi munataka sisi tupitishe? Hatutakubali. Speaker hatapita hapo. Hatapita na kuambia kuna moto.
Whoever is doing parliamentary PR for Jubilee is doing a very poor job. Today, Parliament is cordoned off by police. Even members of Parliament cannot drive in. It has never happened like that before in the history of Kenya. Why do we need to cordon off Parliament by riot police so that even members of Parliament cannot access Parliament? What is the illegality that they want to do in Parliament, that they want to keep the public out of the premises? Under the Constitution, proceedings of Parliament are open to the public.
Jubilee is hell-bent on going ahead with something called impunity. They are now improving what they saw Kanu doing. You can see what is happening. Parliament is a house of men and a house of debate. How do you cordon it from the public? What picture are we sending out there? If this can happen to parliamentarians, then what do we expect to happen during the voting where the public will be involved?
The entire precinct was surrounded by the police contingent. That where we have freedom to come and work for Kenyans, today we were told, who are you who is coming here? This is only for one purpose, to sneak in the illegality, the bill that we all agreed and passed, so that they can sneak in some illegalities to rig the coming general elections.
All right, so that's basically what happened at the National Assembly yesterday, just bits and pieces. And maybe I'll start with you, Eric Latif, first of all, on just the general coverage of that and the fact that there was also anticipated that it was going to be a showdown, and they did not disappoint.
Well, Parliament was cordoned off, and the MPs are wondering why they could not access it. Of course, they accessed it. They were speaking from within the Parliament. Too much drama sometimes is unnecessary. I think the coverage was good in terms of live coverage, so everybody was seeing what was happening as it's happening. There was round-the-clock coverage. We saw Millie Odhiambo saying when she said and when she did. That was good coverage. In terms of having access to the public, that's exactly what we got. The media had access to the precincts of Parliament, and the parliamentary proceedings were televised live as usual. So I think the coverage was as expected.
Okay. David, were you happy with the coverage, the fact that as things were happening, they were actually being transmitted live?
Happy that we live in an era where you have almost real-time transmission of news as it happens, but disappointed that, as editors, as journalists, it's very difficult still to police some of the utterances that come from these live feeds. I was not happy. Online, I had personally to edit some of the content to remove abusive words and personal attacks, which really do not make sense. And it's becoming more difficult for every other editor, to police every word of every leader. We should not be doing that. We expect a little more sobriety, debates that make sense, that really tell Kenyans what is it that we were fighting about. There was more concentration on the drama than the real core issues that affect the future of this very nation. And these are about holding free, fair, and credible elections that reflect the feelings and decisions of Kenyans.
All right. Clay, in terms of the content and the fact that, well, David says maybe we were caught up in concentrating more about the drama. I mean, there is that part of coverage that we really cannot do anything because that's what's happening. You can analyze it later. But do you feel like the content to the viewer was directional in terms of what is really going on?
I think what is happening is as a media, we need to perform our role and actually tell the Kenyans that these are your leaders, these are the people you elected. Because this idea of talking at one another, it's something that the Kenyan politicians have actually taken it to another level. It starts from the presidency down to everybody. So you can't even say like this is wrong and this is right, because that has been it's the form of national dialogue. That's how they communicate. While it's not fair, probably to concentrate so much on that, and we should have concentrated on the issue at hand, it is only, we just have to tell the people this is as it is, because these are their leaders. These are the people they elected. They call each other names. Insults nowadays, they never talk about issues. Like most of the time yesterday, they spent more time calling each other names than actually discussing what was at hand. And at the end of the day, there is very little that the media can do, because we might break it down, but we can only break down what they've given us. So I think, yes, the coverage might have been fair, but I think it's the people who actually are letting the media down is the so-called leaders, because we can only report what they give us. Garbage in, garbage out.
It's the content creators.
They're the content creators. Is there any way, Eric, in your thoughts, that possibly we can play a role to now set the agenda and, like Clay says, to let people know these are your leaders and the matters at hand are ABC. However, this is what they're concentrating on, so that even as we approach 2017, the electorate is very clear that our leaders are this vis-a-vis the issues that affect me or affect Wanjiko are these.
I actually hear what David is saying. It's a very tricky situation, and a tricky situation where the media is at the moment. Look, what the CORD MPs were doing yesterday, they were whipping emotion, and they succeeded. If you looked at the comments on social media, it was complete, clear divide. There were those people who were completely in support of the actions by some leaders like Millie Odhiambo, some utterances by Millie Odhiambo. There were those who were completely in support, and they were saying, yes, this is our leader, this is championing our rights, and this is all that. And that's, I'm sure, is part of what David was spending a lot of his time in the afternoon editing out. Look, we have just aired a clip here of what Millie Odhiambo said, and we did not edit it out. And are we really serving the purpose by showing this to the people?
That's the edited version.
No. Actually, that's one of what she said.
There's one
that would not even dare.
You know, there's some that has been edited. There's some that you deem to be appropriate to show, but maybe not. And that's what David is saying. When we are approaching the election, does the media now again go back to trying to police and to completely edit some of these things that are being said? And what's the effect of that? Remember, after the 2013 elections, one of the biggest complaints was against the media. That the media had become too soft. The media had become the censor body in the country. The media was curtailing freedom of expression. It's a tricky situation.
It's a tricky situation. David, looking at this just being a sample of maybe what we may anticipate in the next few months to come, and the fact that you had to sit down and edit some of it, basically because, one, it was just personal attack. Two, it raises temperatures that are negative, political temperatures that are negative. What do you think is our role, and how do we do this? Again, we do have a special sitting that has been called for tomorrow. How do we do it better if we anticipate that this is what's going to happen?
It's very difficult. I looked at the American media, and it was very difficult policing Trump and whatever he was going to say. They were live in debates, and you throw in things which are not palatable, not fit for public consumption. And I think we are caught in more or less a similar situation. The problem is that ours trends to whip up emotions and try and glorify this ethnic balkanization and passions. And as long as we are going to give media platforms to inflame passions, then we are putting up a situation that will be more difficult to manage than the 2007-2008 early period after the disputed election. There are almost two equal forces fighting each other. And it's very difficult, to take even a middle ground, because, and as Clay says, these are the leaders that were elected by the people. Who else would we turn to? You go to the church leaders, speak almost the same language. You go to the mosques, almost the same language. So
civil society.
Civil society, perhaps even worse. So it is very difficult. Shall we turn off our mirrors of the society, or shall we tell the people?
But is there a way that we can be the voice of reason? We are called the members of the Fourth Estate, and that is a huge title, shall I say. But we are the members of the Fourth Estate. But is there a way we can be the voice of reason? Because evidently our leaders are not about to steer us in a direction that is to unify. It's more.
We have every reason to remain the conscience of society. But as long as you will hear unpalatable words from both divides of the politics, it's very difficult for us. So yes, we keep reminding them that, ladies and gentlemen, please sit back and reason, argue out. Elections is about the people of Kenya. It's not about a coalition and another, or two candidates, or two horses, or whoever they are. It is about the future of this country. It's about the national suffrage, universal suffrage. People to elect persons they deem fit to be in office. But if we cannot agree on these laws, then it becomes very difficult. But again, we are not even prodding the hard questions. Why did we have this very lot of MPs endorse the same law in less than 3 weeks ago? Now, what has happened within those 3 weeks? What is fueling all this animosity overnight?
You see,
Umili has been in Parliament
all along.
Yes. Why would he turn so,
suddenly and violently and very... Yes,
in fact, as it is, we are the voice of reason. We are the only sober people. But you see, what is happening is stupidity can be contracted. I mean, like, we are falling. We might actually...
It's contagious.
Contagious. We might actually fall in the same trap. And this idea of saying, like, oh, be objective, be what... No, I think sometimes it's objectivity has to be thrown out of the window, and we have to be truthful and just say it as it is. And by saying it as it is, it does not mean that airing the insults and the invectives that they hurl at one another. But at the same time, what are you going to cover when the president goes somewhere and actually calls another person a mad person, when the deputy president goes to a place? And this is what they do. What are you really going to cover? Because they don't really talk about the issues. It's about name calling. It's all over the place.
Give all of them a blackout. Yeah. I think that's what...
Yeah, there was a time actually I felt like we should actually give these people a blackout, probably during the time when they were calling each other names and doctors are on strike. Right now, even at the moment, doctors are on strike. Nobody talks about that. I mean, yesterday I had, you were talking to the government spokesman. He actually said that the doctors made a mistake. You should only go on strike when you realize that your services cannot be done without. And he said that we can do without doctors, that Kenyans have proven that. Anyway, nobody's talking about those issues. Now, even if we bring this to the fore and we start writing, I mean, our front pages and editorials, and we start talking about doctor strike, we are not going to sign this CBA ourselves. The leaders, the so-called leaders, are the ones actually who will pull us out of from the brink. But they're not doing that. The issue yesterday at hand, very few people know actually what is going on.
Yes.
Very few people. In as much as we try to break it down to Kenyans, every Kenyan, as David says and Latif says, all these people are so much, they want the drama. That is what was circulating yesterday on social media sites, was more of the drama than actually the issue at hand, which nobody tends to know what it is about. But what we have to ask is...
We know what it is.
No, we know, but you see the people out there,
So why haven't we then let people know these are actually the issues that are at hand? And I think we have made it clear what the issues are at hand. But maybe like Ohito says, we've not gone behind and find out what is it that changed within those 3 weeks. What is it that has created all this animosity?
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Like when you try to explain that to the people, and you see the politicians have come to this conclusion that we are the enemy. The media is actually the enemy. They're fighting one another. At the same time, it's the media that is being blamed. So whatever you try to explain, they bring a lot of drama, and then it clouds the whole issue. It clouds the whole issue.
At what point shall we get this country, to a state where our leaders are focusing on the issue? Because, look, like David is saying, the drama here is about a law that they have sat and negotiated and passed. Then a section of the leadership has seen it wise to introduce some amendments. What is it that is informing the introduction of these amendments? What is it that is informing them? Are there merits, so that it merits and the demerits of this? Why can't the leaders just sit down and discuss this? Now, we are getting to a point where in our country we're used to, if I don't agree with Ohito, instead of sitting down and telling Ohito, Ohito, let's discuss this. I disagree with you on this and this and that, and we seek common ground. What I'll do is I'll come to you and tell you, Ohito is silly. Ohito does not know what he's doing. Ohito, just try and outshout Ohito. And if I scream louder, then Ohito becomes the bad one. And, that's, I think what you are asking is the media helping this situation? And I think we are. Because when we focus now on the drama, and when we focus on, even the headlines are not saying, it's called halts Jubilee, called stops Jubilee, bid to change the law, Uhuru has panicked over the election. We have not actually come back to say these are the amendments, are there merits or demerits to these amendments, and what is the way forward. So if you don't agree with this, if we go into the next election, what are we going to get in the election? We are not discussing that. We are more stuck on this, on the drama that they are feeding, and that's what they love. They love the drama that they feed.
Okay. Ohito, how do we change that moving forward? Because we are likely to see an increase of this kind of drama, if that's the best word to use, especially as we get closer to the election. Case in point, for instance, some of the things that were being said yesterday, personal attacks that possibly don't really add value to the debate itself or what the issues are. Do we get to a point where you literally just put off your camera and walk away?
It's almost getting to that place because sooner or later, much of the debate and utterances were libellous and defamatory. And these are very dangerous for media houses that want to maintain a professional, path. And that is why I was saying we went the extra mile to try and sanitize some of these utterances on the videos. But remember how in an information era, information travels very fast.
They go viral.
They go viral, and people record from TVs or from wherever they are and share such info. But if you look at really, the dignity of the house was, thrown in the open. I mean, exposed in a way that should not be. I think when you are legislators, you should keep to the debate on the floor. I saw for the first time debate going on with several sergeant-at-arms, surrounding the maze, It tells you there's not even trust within the house itself. Why would I want to be a speaker of a house where you have to guard a maze, So, traditionally, it really shows that this lack of good leadership in this country and part of the bigger problem that we have as a nation and which needs to be resolved. But I think Kenyans should be more angry and ensure that such leaders are shown the door. 2, the system that people are fighting over, the biometric, electronic, identification, registration, transmission of voting results, I think is a best practice all over the world. Why anybody in their census in 2016, 2017 should oppose such is, questionable. 2, we have had even basic arguments that if you have M-Pesa transactions secure all over the country, why not about election? Yes. And these are very valid arguments. What is it that somebody fears that if we do electronic single register, then we will be finished, as Honorable Dwelly said on air.
Isn't it reasonable then, because technology can fail, and it has failed before, isn't it reasonable? And now that's where our honors are. What are the backup systems that should be there? Because this is a proposal that is being given by Jubilee to have the manual transmission of votes, but are there other options?
There are very many options. That is why the law says bring in the kit in good time, test it way ahead, 60 days before the election. Bring on board all the partners to oversee the procurement, the testing of the things all over. And then you have some basic argument that in my constituency, there's not good network of Safaricom and Airtel. I mean, there's satellite technology, which we can bring in on a day. Which world do they live in? So I think we need a little more civic education and have a better argument. Kenya cannot afford to go back to the manual ways. And there are only people who have benefited from flawed elections that are pushing this agenda.
All right, and you've mentioned civic education. We'll come to that in a bit.
Now that we've gone into the merits and demerits of the amendments and the law as it is, I'll dive into it, and I'll tell you that all these politicians, all these members of parliament, and all the governors are part of the reason that the people who want manual system, all of them, even the ones who are here shouting loudest that, we want electronic, and they all want manual.
When you say all, you mean both government
both sides of the coalition. And I will tell you this, because they are the ones who have not been pushing for the proper utilization and operationalization of an electronic system in the electoral system at all. These people have fought it. These people have frustrated any effort to have an electronic system in place in the country. We cannot be discussing about an electronic system now, about 8 months out of an election. We are either they want to push an election or we just want to make noise, but in the very end, we know that because we do not have a reliable system in place, we must have a backup. And that backup right now, realistically, will have to be something else than electronic.
But at the same time, I think the question probably the media is not asking, or the media should be asking, or the leaders themselves should be asking, is that we have an administration in place that actually prides itself in being digital. Why would you actually now be taking people to 1997 or 1992 that you want to use manual? And all through, from 2013, you have been telling us how digital you are. In as much as right now, if you're telling us that, if you're saying that the places which don't have all this network and all that, and there are some systems in the government where you're telling people that you have to register electronically. Like now, I mean, I think from next year, you can't do anything to do with the motor vehicle registration if you're not registered into that the system electronically. There's e-citizen. So if you're telling us that actually there are places which will not have this, or how are you going to manage because the agencies of the government now that can only work when the thing is, through the internet.
Which
okay.
is why,
and I guess
so what we should be asking is, all these years you've been priding yourself to be digital. All this time you've been telling us how you've connected so many homes are connected to electricity. Then what is all this thing again that we are going to experience this thing about power failures and all this electronic system failing and all that? What have you been doing? So which means what you're telling us, in other words, is that actually we've been lying to you. We are not that digital. I mean, for me...
But Clay, the question then would be, can the system fail or not?
Any system can fail.
Any system can fail.
Even the manual can fail in as much as when you're transmitting those things, you can bring them to Nairobi or wherever the tailing center, you can have an accident. Any system can fail.
Any system can fail.
But
correct.
You see, all these years, we used to, before all this internet thing, places like deep down inside Masai Mara, people used to make phone calls. There was another technology long before this called VSAT. VSAT is a little bit analog, but it's not as analog as the manual system. I mean, I don't have like an opinion that this is right, this is wrong, and all that. But I think what we should be asking is, we should be questioning all these leaders is, you've been telling us this. Why the change now?
Because,
why
like
can't
I said,
we move?
They all want electronic to fail. Everybody thrives in the chaos, and we've seen these politicians. They thrive in the chaos. They want the chaos of, the system has failed, the system has flopped, there's confusion at this last minute. They know those are the loopholes that they want to exploit. All of them. All of them. Rigging is not only done at the presidential level, and let no leader stand here and tell us that rigging is only done at the presidential level. Rigging is done at MCA level all the way to presidential level. And they all know what they stand to benefit by having a chaotic system. They are all pushing for it. The Jubilee administration, in all its, grand talk about being digital and all, has not pushed for enactment or acquisition of proper electronic systems. The core opposition has not pushed for a proper. They have not had this conversation. We've not had any street demonstrations saying, no, we must have procured an electronic system by now for the next election. We have not seen any demonstration. We have not seen any press conference by Raila Odinga calling a press conference in Upper Hill saying, look, by this time we should have this or we don't have an election. They all know they are going to use this system to push.
Now,
and they also know that this amendment will pass. They know it.
You say it will pass. All right. David Ohito, now that we have another special sitting called for tomorrow, what is it that we should be highlighting? Should we now be breaking down literally, like we're saying, these are the issues at hand? And maybe, like Latif says, possibly there is a reason why there's all this chaos to the benefit of both sides?
No, elections are very emotive, and they spark lots of reactions across the country. With just 7 months to an election, I think we should be having a properly constituted electoral commission in office, not people who have resigned giving instructions and to Chilobas of this world and the secretariat. No, we need the commissioners to be in office. 2, we need transparent procurement of the right technology and bring in stakeholders to have a say that we have faith in this technology we are acquiring. And which is why in the law somebody saw the wisdom that there shall be a technical committee that oversees. Kenya has very many brilliant IT personnel, well-trained, globally respected. Why we want to go back to the traditional school of manual transmission only, it's suspicious. So we must start agreeing on what kind of elections do we want. Do we want credible elections, or just we want a system that is not verifiable, is not, really does not reflect the feelings and decisions of voters when they go to the ballot.
All right. Clay, in terms of now, as we approach 2017, we're just coming to the close of 2016. 2017 obviously is expected to be very hype in terms of election. If anything, if this is anything to go by, what should we as a media be focusing on, especially given that it looks like it could be a very volatile environment?
I mean, every election here, look, by the way, and Kenya is always in election mode all the time. I mean,
right from the time we saw the president.
They start campaigning right from the beginning.
2020.
I think what we need to focus probably on the issues at hand. There are quite a number of things that actually are unresolved and which are affecting the common, as they're called, the common mwananchi. I don't know what the opposite is. I think that's what we probably need to focus on, the issues. But you see, at the end of the day, who articulates these issues? We can set the agenda, and most of the time, mainstream media is always accused of not told that it does not set the agenda. We can set the agenda and say, okay, fine, this is what we should be discussing. But then, at the end of the day, these people call rallies, and what do they tell the people down there? The people down there will actually tend to trust them more when they come up with all this rhetoric. I think going forward, what the media needs to do is to focus more on issues. We've been saying this for over 10 years. Let's focus on issues. Let's focus on issues. Then we do that, and these people come and sweep everything that probably credible that the media has built. They come and sweep it away with their rhetoric. And that's what the people down there believe. The places in this country where you go and they ask you, you're from which newspaper or you're from which media house, they tell you, apana, usikuja hapa. After last elections, there are certain TV stations, like in some areas, if you went probably to a place like Thika and all that, there's some TV stations that you could not find people watching them. I mean, if you switch it on, if you turn to that channel, it's chaos. Maybe in public places, probably, mostly in public places. So it is because of the rhetoric that they go and say, so-and-so is against us. So the war has always been the media. The media is pro-so-and-so. The media, I think what the media needs to do is to stick to the truth. Forget about this thing of being objective, because being objective is reporting your lie and reporting my lie and reporting the other person's lie in equal measure. Yeah. The thing is, I think what you need to do is forget about that and report the truth. You can never go wrong with the truth.
You can never go wrong with the truth. And talking about the rhetoric and what leaders had to say, we also have just a few sound bites of what the majority leader, Eda Duale, and Raila had to say. And, well, let's hear a bit of that, then we conclude on this and move on to something else.
Kama hii mambo inaitwa chicken gate. Ati watu wengine wanakula kuku. Wale watu ambao wamepewa jukumu ya kusimamia uchaguzi katika taifa letu. Sahili ambao wanakwenda kununua vifaa vya uchaguzi, ati wanasema wangeongeza 30%, 30%. Iwe ya chairman Bwana Isaac Hassan na Bwana Chirchir na wale wengine, na bado wako pale pale. Bado wako pale pale, na tangu hii manene.
All right, apologies on that. It didn't quite finish, but maybe your conclusion, Eric, on the IEBC and the fact that we have concentrated more on individuals so far than an electoral system that should deliver credible results.
That's what I was saying. Raila Odinga is still talking about Isaac Hassan. It's a foregone conclusion that he has spearheaded Isaac Hassan's exit from the commission. Why is he still on the man?
Because the man is going to sit on the panel that is going to decide whether...
And the fact that he's still seated there waiting for...
Yes, look, the man is chairing that panel.
If Raila was interested in prosecuting Isaac Hassan, we will discuss Isaac Hassan in a separate forum. I think Raila right now should be talking about the electoral system. And if the electoral system is, well, so we are looking at having a new commission in place. This commission will not come in place until February, from where we are right now, right? So we're not going to have an electoral commission in place.
No, the interviews are over.
Interviews are done. By the time they give, we are going into Christmas. They come back, they debate these things, they give us 14 days.
Special sessions can be called.
Special sessions, whatever special sessions are called, a commission will properly be in office in February. Even if they are sworn in mid-January, clearly they're in office in February. About what? 5 months out or 6 months out of an election, right? We should be talking about the electoral system.
The system
we are not talking about the electoral system. We're not talking about procurement and securing a proper electoral system.
No, Eric, let me clarify. You're forgetting that just last week, IEBC, with the disgraced commissioners and the secretariat that has
disgraced in the words of politicians.
Oh yes, whichever way they have resigned and found themselves unfit to hold office any longer. And they have rolled out a tender calling for the same systems. We are saying they are doing it in contrary to the law, the same system that we will end up using. So what we need to have in place is a stakeholder trusted committee overseeing the procurement of this system so that nobody else says, we were not consulted, we don't know how it was acquired, and which is why there's a section of...
You see, that conversation that you're having is a conversation that I expect to hear from Raila Odinga and the rest. That is what I'm saying.
And let's conclude on that now and move on to something else. And of course, we're coming to the end of the year. And one of the, well, there's several things that we've had as media to highlight and talk about. And one of those, of course, has been graft. There's been major scandals on graft. And we're going to also maybe highlight on the fact that the president has now given Eliud Wabukala's name as the chair maybe for the EACC. We don't know whether he's going to survive, but maybe just to refresh our minds on some of the scandals that we have had this year and just get your feel as to whether we have done a good job in regards to reportage of graft in this country. If we can just have that on graft.
It's President Kenyatta's scandal. He must deal with it as such. He must tell the country what he knows, when he knew it, and what he did when he knew it. This scam is a continuation of what started with the NYS scandal, where again, family members and close confidants of the president were implicated as direct beneficiaries in the theft from the youth of Kenya. This latest scam is a scorched earth war on the most vulnerable in our population. Mothers on the verge of giving birth and babies just delivered or about to be delivered. The president cannot run away from this scam.
All right, and just to mention, we did have some sound bites which we're expecting from also the side of government in regards to graft and what they had to say, so that it doesn't look like it's all biased. But Eric, graft in this country this year has been a major, major topic. Have we broken it down well? I know right now on KTN News, we're running 47 days of accountability, where we're taking the Auditor's General reports and putting facts and figures and literally what the queries are. But your thoughts on maybe how the coverage has been on graft?
It'll never be enough until, you know, we get to a point where we are unearthing corruption ourselves and going to the very end and showing these are the questions that have been raised, and these are the people responsible. These are the people who are responsible, and these are the questions they have been unable to answer, and these are the glaring gaps. I think we still gloss over it. We take the Auditor General's report. Like in this particular case, we have headlines and we have pictures of governors and we have figures and we say Auditor General has said this, missing billions, audit puts county bosses on the spot, but we don't actually go further. I think we need, graft being what it is in this country, requires that we put in a bit more effort as media to be able to break it down, to bring out the actual stories.
Okay. Clay?
I think so far the media, okay, fine. If it's unearthing graft, apart from reporting what probably the leader of the opposition says or the opposition politicians say, and the denials from the government side, I think the media has done quite a credible job in bringing out some of these issues to light. Just the other day, I think 2 weeks ago, the Standard on Sunday came up with this story, which actually was so much hidden in the Auditor General's report about the billions of shillings that actually MPs, they denied later that we used the wrong one. MPs looted from part of the CDF funds. They're so mad that we used the word looted. And we had to kind of make them happy later, 2 weeks later. But you see, such kind of things that where you look into these books and unearth and the things that they're not talking about, because I think that's probably like what they mean by setting the agenda. But after that, who talks about it? Nobody talks about it. So the media actually has done quite a credible job in unearthing some of these things that actually what they wanted to sweep under the carpet or what they never wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Because what most of the time they do is when somebody talks about it publicly, a politician, then they pick it and run with it. And then we lose the narrative. And that's what we ran with. I think what we need to do is now stop losing that narrative and stick to the truth.
Stick to the story itself.
Because campaign journalism, I don't think we do it as much as it used to be done before, where you pick an issue and keep on hammering about it until actually a solution is found.
Okay. Ohito, have we covered graft in a manner that, you know, the electorate and residents of Kenya know that this is the problem, this is where the problem is? And again, focusing on the fact that we're going on an election year, we're going to be electing leaders. Are these the leaders we're going to put back?
It's going to be difficult, again, covering the subject of corruption, because when it is high-profile corruption, both the media house and even the journalists face lots of threats or even resistance while covering. I have had stories where we're covering ministries or even counties, and the next thing they do is to call the newsroom, call the top editors, call the management that, you know, we're doing business with you. We just paid you 3, 5, 10, 15 million shillings. Why are you covering us negatively? Yeah. That should not in any way stop a journalist from covering the story of corruption. The problem that we have in this country, perhaps the biggest problem, I think, is graft, and it's going to be an election agenda. There's no doubt about that. We've covered the State House Summit on corruption, and you saw this desperation, even at the presidency level, in trying to deal with this thing. I always repeat on this show that the president said that even his own office is full of people who are corrupt, but we've not seen a single person sent home. And we saw him trying to do a very good job, and I support and commend him for that, sending cabinet secretaries home who were suspected of having been involved in corruption. But he also had a challenge for the institutions that fight graft, that you asked me that these people were involved in graft. What have you done since I sent them home? And, you know, it puts the president himself in a very tricky situation. But all we need is goodwill and support for that office that deals or fights corruption. There are those high-voltage files which have always been there since PLO Lumumba's time, and they've never been touched. We want to know why they can't be touched. We want to know who owns what outside the country, and whether we can repatriate this. We have seen the good Archbishop, now nominated, man of God. I wish he will stay there longer than Kinisu. And we can only pray for him, but he must pray for himself. He's walking into another high-voltage office. His chances of electrocution, 200%.
Yeah, but actually, it goes back to what Mr. Kenyatta said another time. This is divine intervention. You remember the time when he asked the Pope to pray for
the country,
for corruption or something. Yeah. So I think this is divine intervention. Comes probably at the right time. But you have to know, one thing we have to know is that most of the time these guys at EACC, they've been electrocuted by actually the system. You see?
Yes.
When, as the head of the parental authority, you say, sasa mnataka nifanye nini? And then what is going to happen to the other person who's probably supposed to be the arresting or the law enforcer? He actually also throws his hands up in desperation. So they've been electrocuted by the corrupt or the system itself, because the system is actually made not to work.
Okay. Let me take a call from Robert in Nairobi and hear what he has to say. Robert in Nairobi, thank you for calling.
Yes, this is Robert here. I had a comment. And I just wanted to say, because you're interviewing journalists,
right,
who have the benefit that you can go backwards in your archives and get information. And I wanted to give a view about this change that we are talking about. It has to be electronic only. I want to ask the journalists that when you look at 2007, where Kivitu had a problem with, when he called the elections, prior to that, Raila had pushed that the returning officers' decision to be final on the ground. And when the returning officers started giving results, he was at KICC trying to make Kivitu to cancel, and Kivitu was like, you know, you have to go to court, because once the returning officer says a decision is final, you have to go to court to overturn it. Now, he was trying to get the Kivitu to change that, and it was not possible. So what I keep saying is that Raila will put a position, and in case it works against him, again, he will have a problem with it. Look at what happened in the U.S. People were saying, you know, let's look at the manual ballot, and the U.S. is the foremost democracy. So you need a journalist to go back, look at every election, and ask yourself, the opposition wanted this change done. The elections were called. Did they have a problem with the decision they wanted before the elections? And that is the only way you can inform Kenyans.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll also take a call from a gentleman in Kayole. David in Kayole, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, go right ahead.
Naweza sema Kiswahili?
Kiswahili ni sawa, lugha ya taifa.
Mimi naitwa Sirengo kutoka Kayole.
Okay.
Na nilikuwa nataka kuzungumza kwa mimi mwenyewe ni cameraman.
Okay.
I'm a freelance, let me say freelance cameraman. And nina disagree kabisa na Eric, vile Eric anavyosema kwamba wanasiasa ama wale ambao wanazungumza kuhusu maneno fulani wanafaa wapewe blackout. Kwa sababu hayo ndio wamesema. Tuseme sasa mimi kama cameraman nimeenda mahali kutafuta story. Na hivyo ndivyo huyu mwanasiasa amezungumza vile. Kwa hivyo mimi nikileta mahali tuseme kama KTN na nyinyi mseme kwamba kwa sababu amesema hivi, vile Eric anavyosema kwamba isionyeshwe kwa sababu amesema hivi, alafu station nyingine pia zitaonyesha. Na Wakenya saa hizi tuseme ukweli kwamba Wakenya wanataka kujua kile ambacho mwanasiasa amesema. Kwa hivyo wewe kama tuseme kama labda Michael useme kwamba mimi sitaonyesha hiki kwa sababu huyu mwanasiasa amesema hivi, stesheni zingine zikionyesha itaonekana kwamba pia huenda labda shirika la Standard ama KTN wao wanajitenga na wanasiasa fulani ama mrengo fulani kama tuseme ODM wamezungumza hivi na mmekosa kuonyesha Jubilee. Kuna wale ambao watachukulia kwamba mnajitenga kuonyesha story
kuonyesha. Okay.
Yeah, kwa hivyo mimi nasema kwamba ionyeshwe vile ilivyo kwa sababu ndivyo amesema na haina haja kuedit kwa sababu kama amesema hate speech watu wa Kenya wajue kwamba amezungumza.
All right. All right, thank you very much, David in Kayole. And maybe, first of all, we can start off with, I believe, maybe Clay, your comments on Robert. Basically, he was saying that we need to go back to history. I think that's what he was alluding to, that we need to go back and look at some of these things that have happened previously and inform what is happening today.
Yeah, we probably need to do that. And actually, when we go back to history, we're only going to interrogate one person that, okay, at this time you said this and then you change your mind. But at the same time, you cannot fight technology. We are moving forward. We cannot just stay there that because this person said this, because it's not about Raila only. This is about the system. It's about what if Raila probably is banned from contesting this time because he flouted the so-called law. So do we stop everything because Raila keeps on changing? I think we have to move forward technologically. Just to give a minor example, I think in the 90s, India actually, when they wanted to, the government wanted them to move to electronic voting system, it is the opposition that refused because they did not trust the government. They figured that the government is actually going to use the electronic voting machines. They could be adjusted and they put so many votes before the voting is done. The opposition actually rejected that. Right now, the opposition is actually in power and they are using the same electronic voting system. You see, because what they were fighting was it was a system. I mean, you cannot fight technology. You have to move forward with technology. Right. Then this other gentleman who talks about...
David was talking about the blackout.
Yeah, the blackout.
And how do we do that with being fair?
I think what happens is, one thing he probably does not understand is that media houses, we cannot operate with the rules of the person who brings us content. You have to operate with the rules that are actually in-house rules. So we don't have to air everything that you bring. That's one. And two, also, when there's cohesiveness or cohesion, I mean, because a good story is a good story is a good story. When the media decides, and when you say the media, we mean actually whichever station, KTN, RMS, or whatever it is, when we decide that we are going to give these people a blackout, then a good story is a good story, and if it's a bad story, then no other media is going to air it. So all the media houses will have reached that idea that, okay, fine, this kind of content is not going to be aired.
All right, maybe as we conclude, Latif, what is it that you'd anticipate to see next year done better in terms of media, generally speaking?
I think we need to have a session of media owners and the Editors Guild and all those levels, just sitting down to agree how to conduct electoral coverage. I think that's important. That's what David was alluding to. We need to have a unified approach towards what are we going to allow, what are we not going to allow. Are we going to stand for the country or are we going to stand for the money?
Okay. David Ohito?
I stand for balanced, fair, objective coverage that will take this country to the next level. You know, that kind of information that will really make the voter informed so that they can choose the right people who can lead Kenya to the right direction.
All right, we'll have to wind it up right there. And, well, that's the newsroom. And thank you very much, David Ohito, who is a digital editor with The Standard. We also have Eric Latif, who is a journalist. Thank you. And last but not least, Clay Muganda, who is also an editor with The Standard. And that's where we wind up the newsroom this morning. But do stay with us right here on KTN News. When we come back, well, we'll have some news updates right here on KTN News. Later on, we've also got Lorna, who's going to be giving us some tips on how you can keep fit on your health during the holidays. For KTN Home, it's time for Life and Style.